Hi, I'm Dan, and welcome to Polar Currency video number 83, The Color of Money. I have to blame this video idea on Dean from Massa Basic Coins when he said I should do a short on why the Treasury Seal colors are what they are. I thought to myself, Dean, I'm going to look into it. Well, I fell into a very, very deep rabbit hole, and spoiler alert, I didn't find out a lot of information on why different colors were used by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, the BEP. I mean, I get why gold was used for gold certificates, but no other information. You'd think at this point I would have just stopped, but no. I began to really look at all the different Treasury seals used and discovered they're actually pretty interesting and are a major design element. Although the number of changes and variations is staggering. But of course, before we get going, there's a bit of historical background. The original Treasury Seal actually predates the Treasury Department itself, having originated with the Board of Treasury in 1782 during the period of the Articles of Confederation. The original seal depicts a shield with a chevron containing 13 stars, representing the original 13 states. Above the chevron is a balance representing justice. At the base of the shield is a key that represents authority and trust. The shield is flanked by flowering laurel branches, which primarily symbolize victory, glory, and achievement, but can also signify peace and prosperity. The design is encircled by the Latin inscription that translates to the Seal of the Treasury of North America. This design would remain basically the same for almost 200 years. Trying to identify a name to the different types of Treasury seals is challenging. I've used the book Paper Money of the United States, 23rd edition by Arthur and Ira Friedberg as a guide because the book designates the Treasury seal type and many times reflects the catalog number. The book uses different names, though, for what I've determined are the same Treasury seal types, which lends to some confusion. So I attempted to combine the book Paper Money of the United States seal type, their terminology, with my interpretive naming convention, just to make things not so muddy. There is a bit of congressional legislative background for the Treasury Seal. According to the National Archives, the Treasury Department was first authorized to engrave and print federal notes by the Act of December 23, 1857. The Act of February 25, 1862 required that seals and signatures be engraved on all notes. That explains why the demand notes of 1861 don't have seals. I've done my best to introduce the different Treasury seals chronologically by year and currency type. I'm sure I've made mistakes, but like I said before, they're confusing. Oh, and one more thing. Visually, I've done my best to keep the Treasury seals to scale so you see the comparative size differences. So when a new seal is presented for the first time, it will be to scale. However, I will zoom in on these to show the details and differences of the seal types. All right, enough background. Let's get going. The first U.S. federally issued paper money intended for circulation with a Treasury seal was the Series 1862 legal tender notes and used what I'm going to call the red spike seal Type 1. These notes bear the Act of July 11, 1862. The seal is plain and has no decorative background and was used for every denomination, 1 through 1,000. This Treasury seal was also used on the 1863 gold certificates and for the first original national banknotes that were also issued beginning in 1863. The second generation of legal tender notes bear the Act of March 3, 1863 and use again what I'm going to call the red spike seal Type 2. It's similar to the Type 1 but has decorative details in the background and appears with a much level higher of engraving skill. As always, the Treasury Department can't keep things simple. The $1 and $2 denominations only bear the Act of July 11, 1862, not the Act of 1863. The seal types change from the Type 1 to Type 2 after the first Friedberg number, and both convert back to Type 1 for a single Friedberg number. I'm telling you, my head hurts already. Why am I making this video? Thanks, Dean. Anyway, here you can see the red spike seal types compared side by side, and you can really see the differences in the engraving quality, detail, and background. It's worth mentioning that the national banknotes and the gold certificates never use the red spike seal Type 2. After about 6 years, the Treasury decided a new seal was in order for the Series 1869 legal tender rainbow notes. The Friedbergs refer to this as the large red seal, but I'm adding the word spike to the name because other large red seals are coming and the Friedberg book doesn't differentiate. Used for multiple currency types, the large red spike seal is over twice the size of the original seals, measuring approximately 2 1/8 inches in diameter, and they're much more intricate in design, with a Galesh spiral pattern forming the border spikes. Well, the National Currency Bureau, the name used before the BEP was actually formed, couldn't make up their minds, so with the Series 1874, 1875, and 1878 legal tender notes, they introduced a new seal greatly reduced in size from the large red spike seal. This is the small red seal with rays, which has a higher level of detail than the original Type 1 and Type 2 seals. It has lines radiating out to form the perimeter and vertical lines for the center background design. The small red seal with rays is almost a 1/4 inch larger than the previous original Type 1 and Type 2 seals. During the mid-1870s, a new design for the Series 1875 $100 gold certificate was issued using the large red spike seal. This is the only one of 3 known notes, and this note is held by the Smithsonian Institution. Before we move on, it's important to know that the Bureau of Engraving and Printing took over 100% of the process to produce paper currency in 1877. Since the beginning in 1861, the National Currency Bureau, again the original name of the BEP, contracted private companies like the American, Continental, and National Banknote Companies to assist in production. Over the next decade, there would be a slow turnover from private companies to the BEP. The first banknotes that were solely produced by the BEP was the second issue of fractional banknotes in late 1863, but they carried no seal or signatures. All right, back to the Treasury Seals. By the late 1870s, with the BEP in total control of producing paper money, it must be time for a seal change. That change came with the Series 1880 legal tender notes with what I'm calling the large brown spiked seal. That's right, brown. Not particularly an attractive color, have no idea why it was selected, but the design is identical to the large red spike seal. But we're not done with the Series 1880 legal tender notes. From 1883 to 1889, the seal changed to another new seal. The large red plain seal, which is kind of the same design, only the Galesh spiral outer pattern that make up the spikes from the previous seals are removed, making the seal plain. Meanwhile, in 1882, the $20 gold certificate design was updated to the previously mentioned 1875 $100 gold certificate, and new denominations were added of the 50, 500, 1,000, 5,000, and 10,000 to the Series 1882. And with the new design came, well, you guessed it, a new Treasury Seal. The Friedberg book lists this seal as brown, but I'm calling it the brown flower to distinguish it. The size is the same as the small red seal with rays, but what makes it unique is the overlapping Galesh border patterns that to me kind of look like a flower, and that's why I'm calling it the flower design. But this wasn't the first time that this design appeared. This flower seal first appeared with red ink on the little-known $10 1879 refunding certificate. Specifically the second issue. The first issue, which there are only 2 known, used the original red spike Type 2 seal. It was also a little larger in size, but the brown flower seal is most well known for being used on the Series 1882 brown-back national banknotes. It makes sense given that the same seal and color were also being used on the 1882 gold certificates. Well, in the world of the BEP, things can never remain the same. In the late 1870s, a brand new currency type was released with the Series 1878 silver certificate. They were issued only in larger denominations of 10 through 1,000, and with a new currency type came a new seal. The large red with rays and with a completely new center design. Yet oddly, this was the only time this seal design was used. The 1878 silver certificates are also known for their distinctive backs that used basically a black ink instead of the usual green. The paper was also embedded with blue ink and blue silk security threads. Staying with silver certificates, 2 years later, the Series 1880 came out with yet another new seal, the large plain brown seal. This was another seal that was never used again and bears a very similar design to the large brown with no spikes and other minor variations. The denomination stayed the same and the ink stayed black on the back, but the blue stained paper and security threads were gone due to quality failures. Fast forward 6 years and the silver certificates get yet another update with the Series 1886 with another new variation of the small red seal, creatively called the small plain red seal. About the same size as the small red seals with rays, but with no rays, making it appear smaller. It has a different design than the large red plain seal. The Series 1886 brought 3 new denominations in the 1, 2, and 5, but only the 10 and 20s were updated with the newer design. About 1886, the BEP decided to play a 6-year game of rotating musical chairs by changing the seal from the large red with spikes to the large brown with spikes, and then throw in the large red plain seal for a little bit. And this all happens before 1891. And just for fun, the Treasury released a new currency type with the Series 1890 Treasury notes using the large brown seal with spikes. Both the Series 1886 silver certificates and the Series 1880 legal tender notes follow the same pattern of changing Treasury seals just to keep us all, guessing. To be quite honest, it's a cluster, and you know what I'm talking about, trying to figure out why. Why change the Treasury 4 times in a period of less than 5 years? I don't understand, and I read multiple articles in the Society of Paper Money Collectors Journal magazine 5 times, and I still don't get it, and I saw other information too. So I'm just going to take the blue pill and remain in ignorance and continue living in the simulated reality of the U.S. Treasury matrix. Next, we back up about 10 years because in 1875, the second variation of the national banknote was issued. These were the first notes to get the small red scalloped seal. It would be used for over 50 years until the very last large-size U.S. banknote was issued. An example of how quickly things were changing came in the Series 1890 Treasury notes that started out using the large brown spike seal and then converted in 1891 to the small red scallop Treasury seal. But by 1891, the merry-go-round finally stopped. Well, almost, but we'll get there. The small scallop Treasury seal somehow was declared the winner by the BEP. From then on, all large-sized notes, starting with the Rosecrans and Nebuchadnezzar and sometimes Houston signatures, would all have the same scallop seal. Well, it is the BEP, so of course there is one exception. That exception was the last silver certificates to be issued with a red Treasury seal in 1896. And surprise, it's a new Treasury seal, less ornate, designed for the educational series. The Friedberg book calls this seal small red with rays, which isn't accurate compared to the previous small seals with rays. If you look closely, you'll notice the difference. The belief is that the small red scallop seal was too large and detailed to be used over the very dense and intricate design of the Series 1896 silver certificates, resulting in a new, simpler Treasury seal. But there's more to this seal later. Well, the educational series didn't work out, and with that, the Series 1899 became the first silver certificates to have the small scallop blue Treasury seal and would be issued for another 2 decades. In 1902, a new national banknote design was issued with the Series 1902 national banknotes. It used the small scallop Treasury seal initially in red, but in 1908, as a result of the panic of 1907, there was a currency shortage and Congress passed the Emergency Currency Act of 1908, requiring less stringent requirements for national banknotes, resulting in a legal obligation change. That's how we get the date-back notes. What's strange is the seal color changed from red to blue. No answer to that. The Series 1902 plainbacks remained blue until the end of the large-size notes. In 1906, with the second version of the newly designed $20 gold certificate, the 1905 20 Technicolor only lasted 1 year and had a red seal. But there was a new Treasury Seal color, gold. You have to admit it's a stunner. Maybe because we've just been staring at a lot of red, blue, and brown for the previous 44 years. Now, jumping forward almost a decade, and the repercussions of the Panic of 1907 resulted in the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, a large and sweeping piece of financial legislation that forever changed how paper money would be issued in the U.S. The consequence was the creation of the sixth form of currency, the Federal Reserve Note, with the series of 1914. Like the series 1902 national banknotes, the initial series began with the red scallop Treasury Seal. But then World War I broke out in 1914. The BEP had been importing ink from Germany, who was now locked down with a naval blockade preventing any exports. The seal color was changed to blue for the simple reason that the BEP just had more blue ink lying around than red. Then, jumping to the end of World War I, in 1918, 4 new high denominations were issued with the blue small scallop seal with the Series 1918 Federal Reserve notes with the $500, $1,000, $5,000, and $10,000 bills. Stepping back a few years to 1915, the Treasury Department made their first attempt to discontinue national banknotes and created a new seventh form of paper money, national currency, with the Series 1915 Federal Reserve banknotes using the blue scallop Treasury Seal. This was a complete failure, and with some creative legislation from Congress, the series of 1918 Federal Reserve banknotes were created for a very different reason. If you want to know more about that, check out my video, What Are FRBNs? At the end of the day, the Series 1918 FRBNs used the same small blue scallop Treasury Seal. The 1920s wrap up using large-size note Treasury Seals with all currency types using the gold, red, or blue small scallop seal. From 1919 until 1928, only 4 notes were redesigned in very limited denominations. They were the Series 1923 legal tender notes and silver certificates, and their design was definitely a foreshadowing of things to come. Then comes the big, or should I say small change. All Series 1928 and 1929 currency was redesigned, standardized, and reduced in size by 30%. This marks the end of the golden era of U.S. paper currency. The BEP requirements were to be more efficient and reduce costs beyond the paper size. No more colors, no more beautiful vignettes, no more unique scroll elements, and no more creative Treasury Seals. All of it gone. Efficiency meant using the same basic format for all denominations with decorative design element differences here and there. Each denomination was assigned a portrait for the front and a green vignette for the back for all of the currency types. The goldfish orange reverse only returned briefly for the Series 1934 gold certificates, and these notes were legally not allowed to circulate. So if you weren't in a bank, you never saw them. It was a new day at the BEP, and these same basic designs would remain in place for the next 6 decades. All right, I'm starting to choke up a bit here. Back to the Treasury Seals. With the Series 1928 and 1929, everything was new. Well, almost. They did use a recycled Treasury Seal. Remember the Series 1896 silver certificates? Yep, the BEP pulled that Treasury Seal out of the mothballs after 30 years, and a different color was assigned for each specific currency type. Silver certificates blue, legal tenders red, Federal Reserve notes got a brand new color, green, gold certificates gold, and in 1929 national banknotes got the reduction in size also and had brown assigned to them, although the seal size was just a little bit smaller than the standard 1928s. The colors were used to make it easier for the public to identify the different currency types and banks and the Treasury Department to sort currency. What's kind of an oddity is that with the new 1928 small size currency, they actually had the largest Treasury Seal used on any U.S. small size notes. But things are never simple at the BEP. With the new Series 1934 silver certificates, the seal was moved to the right following the design pattern of Series 1928 Federal Reserve notes and the 1929 national bank notes. But again, oddly, the seal remained on the left for the 1928 legal tenders and the not to be issued for general circulation 1934 gold certificates. I got a quick question here. How's that efficiency holding up? A strange occurrence happened with the Series 1934 Federal Reserve notes that saw the Treasury Seal color drastically change from the Series 1928, well, we'll call it forest green color, to a very bright green that's referred to as the light green seal. The light green seal lasted until 1937 before the BEP slowly converted the green color to first what's being described as a blue-green or dark green seal to the standard dull green color that would carry forward. This changeover of 3 different green colors was completed by 1940, and you know what? I'm going to ask the question again. How's that efficiency going? Lack of information sidebar rant. What's frustrating to me is trying to figure out the answer to a simple question. Why did the green color change for Series 1934? Again, after reading multiple articles about when the change took place, all I found out was that there were problems with colorblind collectors. Yes, that was addressed at length. Tracing star note serial numbers was helpful in part of the time period, and that lent to more information. But at the end, the question remains unanswered. Why did the color change? What was the problem with the original Series 1928 green color? It's certainly possible I'm being obtuse about it and just missed the answer, but I feel I did what I could do. I think it's just burying the lead in the articles. How can you not answer the question? End of sidebar. There were a few additions before the Federal Reserve green color started changing, well, colors. In the early years of the Great Depression, there was a cash shortage and an old currency type had to be brought back in the form of an emergency currency. This was the new small-size Federal Reserve banknote Series 1929 that was actually issued in 1933 using the brown seal. Also, the $1 silver certificate was given a facelift for both the front and back. With that change, the Treasury Seal was greatly reduced in size for the Series 1935 $1 silver certificate and would be another foreshadowing of things to come. Also in 1935, the Treasury finally was able to discontinue national banknotes. Another sad day for us currency collectors. The 1928 and 1934 Treasury Seals would remain the same well past World War II, although by the end of the war, 3 currency types were gone and another color was never to be used again. That color was brown, which was revived with the printing of emergency currency issued for Hawaii following the bombing of Pearl Harbor. The final printing of the color brown was in 1944 when the special currency was no longer needed for Hawaii. A World War II footnote is that the final $29 million worth of the 1929 FRBNs were released into circulation in 1942 to help with yet another currency shortage that was at the beginning of World War II. World War II called for a second emergency wartime currency needed in Africa and Europe. These notes have become known as North Africa notes, and the seal color used was yellow, not gold. The color was used to differentiate the notes from the Hawaii overprints, especially the $1 silver certificate, which was issued for both. The Hawaiian notes were also issued in 5, 10, and 20s, but were Federal Reserve notes. The North Africa series were only issued in the 1, 5, and 10 denominations, and they were silver certificates, all of them. The 5 and 10 are flat out striking with the blue bold serial numbers and decorative numbers combined with the bright yellow seal. These are the most colorful small notes issued arguably until the 2004 colorized series. Once again, no answer as to why the colors were selected, although one can assume brown because it was just laying around, but yellow, I've got nothing. 5 years after World War II ended, the Series 1934 received a slew of small changes making the design for the Series 1950 Federal Reserve notes. That included the reduction in size of the Treasury Seal, matching the size change with the Series 1935 $1 silver certificate 15 years earlier. 3 years later, all denominations of the Series 1953 silver certificates and Series 1953 legal tender notes were updated to the same design as the Series 1950. The 1950s came to a close with the $1 silver certificate with the addition of "In God We Trust" on the back and a minute change to the faceplate alignment, triggering the Series 1957. The early 1960s came out with Series 1963, and for the first time, a Federal Reserve note had a $1 denomination. It appears the green color was changed yet again from the Series 1950. A postscript here is that the Series 1963B, the bar note, only was issued with the $1 denomination and would be the last series issued with the Treasury Seal in Latin, because in 1968 a new Treasury Seal debuted with a much more simple design with the basic elements and changing the Latin to the Department of the Treasury and adding the date 1789. The Series 1966 100 legal tender note was the first note to use the new Treasury Seal. Ironic, it was also the last legal tender note red seal to be printed and issued. The adoption of a new Treasury Seal triggered the new series of 1969, but only in Federal Reserve notes. It's interesting for the 100 that the denomination behind the Treasury Seal is spelled out on the 1966 legal tender. The 100 numeral was used for the Federal Reserve note and had been since 1928, also for the gold certificate. 1968 also saw the discontinuation and removal from circulation of silver certificates and legal tender notes, leaving green as the remaining Treasury Seal color and now the only U.S. currency type, the Federal Reserve note. A small bonus was the $2 denomination was brought back with the Series 1976 Federal Reserve note, and no, it was not a bicentennial note. The Treasury Seal design would go unchanged until 1996, when the green color was once again changed, becoming darker with the introduction of the monochrome series, which was the first real U.S. currency redesign in almost 7 decades. Although the monochrome series didn't last long, today's colorized notes began circulating only 8 years later with the series 2004 $10, $20, and $50 Federal Reserve notes that seem to have kept the same color green for the Treasury Seal. One final footnote for green. The color was first used on the 4th issue, 3rd version of the 50-cent fractional note with Samuel Dexter, who was the 3rd Secretary of the Treasury and 4th Secretary of the War at the same time in 1801. Now there's a fast fact for you. That's it for history of the type and color of the Treasury Seals, the color of money. The design certainly had a visual impact on U.S. currency, especially with the large seals issues. But since the size reduction in 1928, not so much at all. But it still fulfills the legal obligation that makes U.S. money legal tender. It will be interesting to see what happens next. The BEP is currently developing a new issue with the $10 debuting in 2026. At least that's what the website states as of November 2025. I'm in the believe it when I see it state of mind. As always, I appreciate your time. Please take the time to subscribe to the channel, hit that thumbs up button, and feel free to leave a comment or a question. We'll see you next time, and thanks for checking in.